Hey y'all, so we just had a client close on a $500,000 house for less than $1,000. Stay tuned and we're going to tell you how we did. Hey everyone, welcome back. And I want to first address the elephant in the room, which is, I promise you, Brandon and I, we did not coordinate our outfits. We just happened to have standard dad issue. And that's where we are. So now that we have that out of the way, that it's not pre-coordinated, I'm Weldon Hobbs with Team Hobbs Realty, right out of Realty One Group Apex. We are a collection of individuals that have a mindset of serving others, right? And that's who we surround ourselves with. And so next to me, I have Brandon, as I mentioned, and he is the loan officer that I work with and recommend to my clients on a regular basis. Now, clients, they're under no obligation to use me, use Brandon. You interchange us however you need to. But whenever we work together, there's some incredible stories that and unique value propositions that we get to experience together. And then one of those we're going to expand on today. So a little bit about Brandon: husband, father, believer, former naval officer. And Brandon, what else do you want to add to that?
Well, first of all, thank you for having me. It's great to be here with you today. I jumped into the lending business, wholesale mortgage lending business, after a 26-year career in the Navy, and kind of fell into it. What I have learned as my journey, I've been doing it for about 5 years now, is that the agent-lender relationship is absolutely vital to a successful transaction. And through my trials and tribulations, I've learned that I need to surround myself with people, with agents who are caring, passionate, and have that desire to serve others. Because at the end of the day, while you can get any transaction done, it takes effort. It takes a little bit more than the average to get it done correctly. So I'm very grateful to be able to work with you, and thanks for having me.
Absolutely. And the feeling's mutual, right? And our shared backgrounds, just in value, how we value character, commitment to getting the job done, a focus on community, that is paramount to how we operate. And quite honestly, is part of is just who we are, right? And so we're able to pass that on to our clients. So Brandon, to kick things off, right, we kind of touched on it with, what is that relationship between the lender and the real estate professional, the real estate agent? And why is that important? Like you touched on it a little bit, but let's dive a little bit deeper, because I think you and I both find value in that, and can, where does that pay off for the client?
Well, it pays off huge for the client. And basically, they have an advantage from the beginning, from the very beginning. If you have a lender and an agent who have that relationship built on trust and communication, then they can put their heads together. They can figure out exactly what the client needs, because you talk so much, you go back and forth, you figure out what might work, what might not work. But through that dialogue and through that mutual respect that you have for each other, then comes the communication, and you figure out the best game plan for the client. And at the end of the day, they get a better transaction, a better deal, and it works out great for everybody.
Definitely. And I wholeheartedly believe in that too. Like, it's a much higher likelihood of success. You can be successful in any combination. We're just talking statistically, though, that it's more likely to go smoother, and you're able to resolve challenges, because there are always challenges. I don't care if you're buying or you're selling, there are always challenges. And who's on your side to solve that? Well, that's why you have a team. You have somebody that brings that team together to solve those challenges in the moment, because it's also very fast. That's how quickly a deal can fall apart as well. And so those lines of communication, couldn't agree more. And I think that's absolutely how folks benefit from it.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. So now let's get into the meat of this thing. So we opened this up saying we got our client into a $500,000 home for less than $1,000. And specifically, it was $700 that it took to get in there. Now, tell me, was that a phenomenal deal?
Oh, it was absolutely a phenomenal deal.
And how did we do it?
We did it because, going back to what I was talking about earlier, we were on the same page. We had talked about the clients. We had figured out exactly what they needed as a family. And by having that needs list, if you will. We got a game plan going, and we were able to, go back and forth and work it so that it worked out really well.
Absolutely. And so whenever we're having that communication, we're each picking up bits of information, right? And thinking ahead, so that way, how do we resolve the next challenge? How do we get over the next hurdle? Seeing around the corner, if you will. I mean, that's essentially what you're hiring professionals for, that have been down the path before, is to shine a light there. And that's exactly what happened in this case. And I'm so excited to be able to continue to dive into this story, but that is the premise of it, right? That's incredible. Okay, Brandon. So our client, we're going to just call them the Smith family in this case, right? So we knew that they were moving to Colorado Springs. I listened to their situation, kind of had some idea of the dynamics that were going into play. But in order to better inform our home search, I referred them to you. And what was the first thing that you asked them to do after you talked to them a little bit?
Yeah. So the standard process is we do an online application, which literally can take 20 minutes or so. We collect income and asset verification documents, bank statements, pay stubs. We run a hard credit check, and we get a copy of your driver's license. And that's all there is to it.
Sounds pretty straightforward. Maybe that you've gone through this a couple of times. But on top of that, so how quickly is someone able to actually do this? If they said, hey, I want to get my home search started now, and they call you, what does it start to finish in order to get that pre-approval?
So it totally depends on the client. But if you have a motivated borrower who wants to get things done right now, we can have a no kidding signed pre-approval letter within 3 or 4 hours.
Right on. That's pretty quick. Yeah, I'm not sure what moves that quickly in real estate, but that's a pretty great part. What's worth actually talking about here are some of the complexities of this particular transaction and the dynamics that were going on, right? So you have a relocating family from a different state who needed to sell their home there. So automatically we have a contingent offer, right? That is a dynamic when putting forward an offer here in Colorado Springs. Absolutely. And then you had the budget that they wanted to stay with. Even though they were approved for some X amount more, they knew where they wanted to stay at. And then the school district that they wanted. And that completely shaped the home search. And as we started going through the home search itself, they were actually stayed in the state that they were residing in. And I ended up doing remote showings for them, which was, I don't mind doing that at all. I love it. It's what we do for our military clients. Kristen and I, we did that while we were active duty as well. And so it's not foreign by any stretch of the imagination. It's or uncommon to buy a home sight unseen. But all that said, that shaped the landscape of what we were going to do. And then we found the one. And that next thing was that first phone call to you.
Right. Yeah. And that is when I love those phone calls. I absolutely love those phone calls, because that's when I get to roll my shirt sleeves up and get to work. I take the property that you are presenting, I run the numbers, we look at taxes, we look at insurance, we look at metro districts, we look at what the payment's going to be. And then I compare it to the budget that I've been presented by the seller. And in this situation, it all lined up perfectly.
Right on. And what I'd add to that is whenever I'm calling you, as soon as you've done all those numbers, right, I'm saying, hey, what are the closing costs here? What is it that we can ask for in concessions based on the type of loan that our clients are pursuing, right? And then that informs what we ask for from the sellers. And that is critical, especially in this case, because one of the primary objectives was to have as little out-of-pocket expenses as possible. And would you say, in this case, objective met?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. This is a military family executing a permanent change station move, which you and I have done about 20 of them combined. Moving as a military family is stressful. It can be very expensive if you don't properly plan and budget for it. And we were given a set of criteria by our clients, and we nailed it. And what that does is that creates the ability on their part to plan and budget for that move appropriately. And when you're able to plan and budget, it takes some stress out of the equation. And so when we can serve our clients, create that ability to remove some stress from a PCS move for a military family, it's absolutely a home run.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it's an incredible feeling, right? Because you're adding value to their life, and they find value in that, and they have a landing spot whenever they get here that meets their criteria, and I love that. And admittedly, this is kind of an atypical situation, but whenever we're able to do this, it's great. And in this particular case, based on the criteria, we had some specific neighborhoods we were looking at, homes that were sitting a little bit longer than the average market or average days on market. And so that's what created this target of opportunity. And we were able to hit the target. It was cool.
So there was another piece to this transaction that added stress and complexity, and you really helped them with that. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Definitely. And I love this part because in the conversation and the complexity you're talking about, right, is getting their home sold in that state where they were coming from. Now, what helped out significantly was that the Smith family had a contract already on their home. But whenever we actually went to get everything, put our offer forward, but let's back that up a few months. And that was whenever the Smith family first reached out to me. And I was, again, just talking through, make sure I was the right fit for them as a real estate professional and could guide them based on what they were looking for. They mentioned that, hey, they still have the house that they need to sell. And I said, okay, are the cash proceeds from that, is that going to be required for you to buy a home here? And they said, yes, it is, right? We don't want to put any additional money down. And I said, okay, great. Do you have a way to get your home sold where you're living now? And they said, no, not really. We haven't looked too much into it. And what I offered was, I know what to look for in other agents and kind of be that litmus test of what is their methodology? How do they deliver for clients? What is their mindset? And I know what I'm looking for. And I put myself in the shoes of whoever's asking for this. And so that's exactly what ended up happening. I offered to say, hey, would you like me to interview agents in the area and then make a recommendation to you? And they said, yes, that'd be awesome. And so that's exactly what I did. I called about 6 different agents and found the one that aligned similarly as to if I were serving the Smith family in that situation, that there was alignment there. And that's exactly what, that very next week, the Smith family ended up meeting with this agent, and then they got it listed about a month later or so. And it was under contract within a week. And so they solved one part of their puzzle, because once they got that contract, then they were able to start their search here in earnest, because they were prepared buyers, right? And that's a big part of it, is being prepared to put in an offer. And everybody's situation is different. And so that is what we do with our mindset, is how do we solve these challenges along the way?
Yeah, absolutely. And that challenge, folks, of selling your home, what you did, you alleviated so much stress, gave them time back, made it happen for them. And that is huge. You cannot put a price tag on that.
Right on. It was great. I was thankful it all worked out there. So Brandon, you and I, we've been in the people business for a long time, and the real estate industry is no different, right? We have emotions of folks. You have emotions of buyers. You have emotions of sellers. You have other agents involved. You have a closing officer and their requirements. You have all these different competing objectives. And so we try and bring those things together harmoniously as much as possible. And with that, though, and I know the answer to this, but I want to hear from you. Is any situation the same? So when somebody comes and says, hey, I'm looking at what my loan options are, have you found one that's a cookie cutter approach, or what is that process from your perspective?
So the answer is absolutely not. What I tell clients is every situation is different. Every client has a unique set of needs. And what I have tried to do in my business is be able to pivot and flex and tailor the particular situation, the particular transaction to the respective client's needs. So, for example, when I first start looking at a transaction for a borrower, we start out with what is the budget, obviously, that's huge, but it goes into more than that. What type of loan are we looking at? Do you want to do conventional? Do you want to do VA, maybe FHA? In this case, with the Smith family, it turned out to be a VA loan. Okay, great. The situation was a little complex because we had to sell their home there to get the VA entitlement back, but we worked out on the same day. It worked out beautifully. So anyway.
Wait. Did you just say that they closed in the morning on their first home, got the documentation to you in time to close on their home here in Colorado Springs the same day?
Yes, sir. That is absolutely correct. And
is that like pulling rabbits out of hats?
I'm not going to say it's like pulling a rabbit out of a hat, but it definitely takes a lot of coordination, a lot of trust and communication, right, between all the parties involved, because it doesn't happen on its own. But if everybody's working in the same direction, you can absolutely do that. So yeah, in this situation, we went with the VA. One of our constraints by clients were, hey, they wanted to minimize their out-of-pocket costs. Okay, great. That means we're going to go zero down. So when you go zero down, then you just keep working the problem, and eventually you come to that optimum solution. And with these folks and your ability to get exactly what we needed in concessions to minimize that out-of-pocket cost, they got a $500,000 house at a great rate for less than right around $700.
It's pretty incredible. They were happy clients without a doubt. And of course, I say that comment tongue in cheek as far as pulling rabbits out of hats, because you're right. Bringing this all back to the very beginning, it came down to communication.
Yep.
And that is a winning combo for sure.
Yep, absolutely.
So if you haven't picked up on a theme yet, right, there are challenges with this particular transaction. And of course, we had all willing parties too, but it was just figuring out, okay, here's the situation. How do we navigate it and get through that? And there's the known challenges, which we already kind of talked about, and with being the getting the home sold. Then there's some of the unknown challenges that pop up, right? And that could be inspection. That's always a huge one because you don't know what you're going to find in there. But in this case, we had already gotten way past inspection. We were getting ready to come to the closing table, and out of nowhere, an obscure law was discovered where if these clients closed on their house and bought another house out of state, there was an $1,800 tax of some sort. And what I loved about it is because when you called me and said, hey, Weldon, this is our scenario, I'm still thinking about what our options are. And I said, okay, great. Think about it. And when you come to a dead end, or we need to spitball it together. Let's figure it out. And so this is your story to tell. And I loved it. And because again, it just kind of reemphasizes that mindset that you have for taking care of folks and finding optimal solutions. So over to you, Brandon.
All right. Yeah. So there's always speed bumps, and unfortunately they like to appear in the road at the last hour, the last minute, if you will. But in this situation, we had buyers in Colorado. Well, let me back up. They were living in another state, buying a home in Colorado, but the state where they are at, if they signed the papers to buy in Colorado in that state, they were hit with that tax. So, things have a way of working out. And I happen to be from the area where they are currently at, or they were. And I knew that there was a state line about an hour's drive away. So my thought was, my solution, hey, I wonder if they'll take a Sunday drive and cross the state line, meet a notary, sign the paperwork, and we're good. And they did, and it worked out great.
Right on. And so whenever you came up with that idea, you called me, and I was like, that is brilliant. Brilliant. Where do we want them to have meet at? And you said?
Waffle House.
I said, Waffle House works.
And it worked.
Yes, it did. It absolutely did. And so you're right. for the cost of an hour's drive, a meal at Waffle House, we were able to save our folks $1,800 or probably $1,700 all in. But anyway, I appreciated the mindset because again, problem solving in the moment. We figured out a solution, which was a win for them. All right, Brandon. So you and I, we both study the market from different perspectives, but it's certainly complementary, right? And we're looking at it from a macro level, all the way down to a micro level right here in Colorado Springs and throughout Colorado where you're licensed, right? And so whenever you're looking at things from a mortgage rate perspective, can you tell me a little bit about that process and how you set your clients up for success?
Yeah, absolutely. The first thing I'll say is it is impossible to time the market, but I feel very strongly that, as a real estate professional, as a mortgage lender, that it's my job to study the market, to be as informed as I possibly can with whatever may be happening in the world or at home that is going to affect mortgage rates. So in this case, I had spoken with the borrower, Mr. Smith, a number of times, and I understood where he wanted to be. And, through the process of being involved every day, studying the market every day, I had some information that I thought, hey, we need to lock on a certain day because I believe the market's going to shift. And, I'll always say it's better to be lucky than good. And in this case, we were lucky and we made the decision to lock, and it worked out great for the client.
I love it. Can I push back a little bit and just say, yes, luck is sometimes involved, but whenever you study the market and you actually know your business, you start getting these hunches that tend to play out over time. And that to me is a mark of a professional.
Absolutely.
Right? And so you took that professional mindset, something you do every day, and you applied it to your client and you delivered a win. And a win all around, right? Because together, we're working together. And if they're not happy with one part of the transaction, that goes both ways, right? But in this case, again, you set the precedent, you knew what you were doing, and you made it happen.
Yeah, it was awesome.
It was awesome.
All right. So Weldon, in working with you for the time that we have, I have come to notice something about the way you approach your business. As real estate professionals, we all have our own way, what we do, and how we interact with clients and get the transaction to the finish line. But there's something with you that I really admire, and what I have noticed, what that is that at the closing table, at the end of closing, that is not where your relationship with your clients ends.
You're right. You're absolutely right. My mindset is, and this is completely selfish, right? I want to be your point of contact for all things real estate for a lifetime, right? But it's more than just that, because yes, I take pride in the profession and being able to deliver that top tier service that folks expect, that they need, and the trust that comes with that. That is meaningful and intrinsic to me. And so to guide people appropriately, that's what I want to do. And part of that, I think to your point, and I think you have the same mindset in all of this, is how do we take care of our folks that are moving, right? So that is, going back to your point earlier, this is a stressful situation. We meet them where they are at. And so if we have a single mom and she has the kids and she doesn't have time to get that house cleaned, well, we're going to make sure that house is cleaned, right? We know that is a paramount need. Or, hey, during inspection, the sellers didn't want to take care of the carpets, right? And so, okay, great. Let's go make sure that the carpets are taken care of. We know that was important to our client. But every situation is different. And again, we as professionals, we're doing a lot of observation to see where we can meet the needs of those that we're working with. And I love it. It's going back to, and we're going to sound like a broken record, mindset, but it's what we've done our entire lives. We are serving people just like we did in uniform, but in a different way. And that matters to us both. That is why we both, at least I, and you can chime
Absolutely.
in, why we felt called to this line of work after the military, because we know that we could add value based on our experiences, based on how we handle the profession, how we study the profession, and provide that to others.
Yeah. Well said.
And I'll just wrap this up to say, I am thankful for a teammate with the same mindset so we can deliver wins and stories like this one.
Absolutely.